First, understand what is a relative clause. That is important. Okay. Now, when you want to understand what exactly is a relative clause, you need to first know what is a relative pronoun. Okay. So first, when we talk about relative clauses, okay. So relative clauses are nothing but clauses that begin with relative pronouns. Okay. So RP. Now, what is a relative pronoun? A relative pronoun is that pronoun, okay, which refers to the noun just before the pronoun and depicts extra information. Okay. So majorly what sort of relative pronouns we have in the SAT are who, whose, whom, which, that. Okay. Now, out of all these 5 relative pronouns that we have, these 4, who, whose, whom, which, they depict extra information. Okay. Whereas only this one relative pronoun, that, it depicts essential information. Okay, that is the reason, if you remember when we were doing punctuations, we have this rule that there are no commas around that. No commas around that. Open your reading book, start. No commas around the word that. It's a rule. Okay. Now, how do you understand what is the actual use of a relative clause and why are we actually learning this chapter? So the point of a relative clause is even if you delete it from the sentence now, the sentence still makes sense. And what is important is the punctuation part of that relative clause. Okay, let me explain how. Suppose look at this example. The tiger who was hungry, ate my aunt. Okay. Now, this is actually a normal sentence, but it has a relative clause. So, the punctuation rule of relative clause says that the relative clause is supposed to be between 2 commas or no commas. 2 commas or no commas. Understood? Now, remember when we did punctuations, we said everything between 2 commas is non-essential. So what is the meaning of non-essential? Non-essential means even if you remove this part of the sentence should still make sense. So the tiger ate my aunt. It is making sense, right? Understood? So every relative clause is a non-essential clause. Okay, but not every essential clause is a relative clause. This is not possible. This is always correct. Understood? Got my point? Now, sometimes, suppose, let's say, for example, Sunetra says, ma'am, I feel that this part of the information is important. So I do not want it to be treated as non-essential or extra information. So what can you do? What you can do is you can simply remove these both commas. Okay, because we have the rule of 2 commas or no commas, or you can remove both the commas and replace this who with that. So the sentence essentially will become like this: the tiger that was hungry ate my aunt earlier today. Understood my point? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Both of you. Siddhant, understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Now this is relative clause. So what do you
Ma'am,
understand?
it could be anything in place of earlier today, right?
Yeah, anything. Anything.
Yeah.
I just simply have mentioned it, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the entire point here of learning relative clauses is whenever in a sentence you see relative clause, remember this punctuation rule. Okay. Now, sometimes, very rarely, one comma is acceptable for a relative clause. Okay. That happens very rarely, but I will still just explain it to you. I'm clearing this up. If you need to take a screenshot, please take a screenshot.
Done, ma'am.
Done? Okay. Now,
Ma'am, not yet done.
oh, sorry.
Ma'am, have to take a screenshot on a laptop.
Just press print screen. PRTSC will be there on your laptop.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, ma'am, done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So now what you have to understand the next thing. This is a little complicated, but you'll understand it. Now it is said that when a relative clause, okay, comes towards the end of the sentence, comes towards the end of the sentence. Oh God, what happened? Am I audible? Yeah, comes towards the end of the sentence. Okay, so what happens? One comma is acceptable. One comma is acceptable. So when only one comma is acceptable, it means that it is an essential clause. Let me explain it to you. With an example, you'll understand better. That is the woman. Let's say not that. Let's say she is the woman, okay, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics this year. Okay, suppose this is the sentence. Now, I'm keeping this as a comma here. Who won the Nobel Prize? This is the relative clause. Okay. Now, what happens is this: who won Nobel Prize for Physics this year? This entire thing is a relative clause. Why? Because it begins with a relative pronoun. But if I understand one thing, the relative clause is ending with a period, and here it begins with a comma, right? So what has happened here? If I remove this part of the sentence, who won Nobel Prize for Physics this year? She is the woman. Is the sentence making sense? It won't, right? So because it's not making sense, one comma is acceptable. So what does it mean when a relative clause starts with one comma but ends with a period? Then one comma is acceptable. Understood? Got it? Did you
Yes,
understand
ma'am.
what I'm
Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
explain? So such relative clauses are called as essential clauses. Understood, dear? Got my point? This is
Yes,
relative
ma'am.
clause. Now, the same thing applies for non-essential clauses and essential clauses. Essential clause, I just explained to you what is an essential clause. Essential clause is nothing but with the presence of a relative clause with just one comma becomes a essential clause. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, let's just check what do I mean by, is there anything else that I'm missing out on essential, non-essential clauses? So just understand one thing, Nana, everything that comes between two commas is non-essential. So if something is coming between two commas, then understand one thing, that the sentence should make sense without it. If the sentence is not making sense without it, then you remove both the commas. Understood? Got my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Then, uh, so what can you do in case, suppose the sentence is not making sense? If you remove that entire part, what will you do punctuation wise? Like I said, punctuation wise, you will simply just remove both the commas. Understood? And you will remove the relative pronoun also, provided it is a relative clause. Understood my point? So you will just replace who, whose, whom, or which with that. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I missing out on anything? No, that's it, Nana. That's essential, non-essential clauses and relative clauses. Got it? So basically, what is the difference between a relative clause and essential, a non-essential clause? The only difference is the presence of the relative pronoun. Okay, but both of them actually have the same context. That is, they both are extra information and can be removed from the sentence if with the presence of two commas. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other doubts? Anything that you want to ask? Anything you have not understood? Okay.
No, ma'am. Understood.
Now, moving on to the topic of word pairs and comparisons, Nana. If you want to take a screenshot of this, please take. Meanwhile, I'll just open the other. Done?
Yes, ma'am.
Dhanush, done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, let's move on to something called as word pairs and comparisons. So, word pairs, do you know what are word pairs? Not only, but also either or, neither nor, you know, those are word pairs. So, we have a certain word pairs that are very, very common in SAT. For example, look at here, as and as. Okay, now some people what they don't understand is when you use the word as, that means you're trying to show two people as equal or two things as equal. You're comparing them, but you're comparing them in the context that they're equal. You're not saying that one is more and the other is less, or one is less, the other is more. So what happens is you can't use the word than with as. You can use the word as and as only. So as and as is one pair, not only but also is one pair. Okay, here also is not compulsory, but not only and but definitely is a pair. Understood? And it's not important that but and also will come together. Not only will come together only, but and also can be separated here like this. See, Martha Graham was not only a great dancer, but she was also a great choreographer. So it's not compulsory that but and also have to come together. Understood?
And we
Then
can write that as Martha Graham was not only a great dancer but also was a great choreographer.
yeah, you can write that
Can we
also.
write that way?
Yeah, you can write that 100%. But also was a great dancer. So you have to be very careful. I mean, just remember, not every time but also will work. Understood? Sometimes you have to separate but and also.
Okay, ma'am.
More than, less than, longer than. Okay, more and than, less and than, longer than, lesser than. Okay, so this than and more or less is a combination. Okay, people see she's as longer as the snake. People say that. That's wrong. When you're using comparative degree, what is important is to use the word than. Got it? Understood? Then
Yes, ma'am.
neither nor, either or, that is also a pair. So what sort of questions do you get from this topic word pairs is very simple, Nana. Whenever you get this question wherein you have to, you'll get one of the words. So not only will be used, but also will be missing. So you have to remember that your option has to be, you have to have the option of but also already there. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, come to comparisons. So, what happens is the biggest point with comparisons is we do something called as faulty comparisons. Now, see here, measuring 25 feet, a python named Medusa is longer than any other snake in the world. Actually, it's not then, it has to be than, right? Then cannot be used because then is a word that is used to refer as time. Okay, but what actually faulty comparisons means is you're supposed to compare two things belonging to the same category. Close the door, no? You are supposed to have two things belonging to the same category. Like for example, Dhanush Dhanush's music is better than Sunetra. Normally, we think that this sentence is correct, but it is actually wrong. Why? Because we are not comparing Dhanush and Sunetra. We are comparing Dhanush's music with Sunetra. So, what you're doing indirectly, you're comparing music to a human. Understood? Which is wrong. You're supposed to compare music to music and human.
Sunetra's music, I guess.
Correct. You're supposed to compare music to music and human to human. So the sentence has to be Dhanush's music is better than Sunetra's music. Okay? Understood? Or you can use the word that of. So you can write Dhanush's music is better than that of Sunetra's. Understood? Got my point? So we didn't use Sunetra's music because this that refers to music. Understood? Got it? Both of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you have, now here instead of that, you can use those when the comparison is plural. Okay, like for example, Dhanush or like say Sunetra's skills are better than those of Dhanush. Because we have used skills, which is plural, that is why we have to use the word those instead of using that. Or the same sentence can be written as Sunetra's skills are better than Dhanush's skills. Understood?
Ma'am, what if we end only with Dhanush's?
That's wrong. That's informal. That works in case of spoken English, but it does not work in case of written English.
Writing. Yeah.
Got it? So that is word pairs and comparisons. Understood? Both of you.
Yes,
It's a
ma'am.
very small chapter, but it's a very, very important chapter. And very simple questions you'll get from this. Like, it's a very, very nice chapter. You should actually, get a hold of it. Okay. So I'm sending both the PDFs. Dhanush, Siddhan, do you require me to send the PDFs or do you have them?
Ma'am, you have sent them in March 12th verbal one, I guess.
What?
You have sent this PDF already in that March 12th verbal group, I guess.
In the March 12th verbal group, I deleted that group. I think you didn't realize it probably.
Oh,
I have,
send it to me.
yeah, I have deleted that group.